Hi everyone, my name's Alexia. I'm a talent and employer branding manager at Go1. In this episode, we talk about all things employer branding, industry experience, and internal recruitment. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Recruiter. We have a special episode for you all today. We have got the famous Alexia Ellmers from Go1. Thanks for joining us, Lexi.
Oh, thanks for having me. Look, I wouldn't sound famous though, but thank you.
You're a brand manager. You are famous for the candidate funnel. I'm actually really keen to dive into your background, but for context, maybe give us a couple of minute kind of overview of what you've been getting up to over the last couple of years.
So I guess my very first, firstly, I've been in recruitment for nearly 10 years, which sounds like a long time considering
Like us.
Yeah.
right?
It's getting on a bit,
We're
eh?
But I'm
veterans.
still in my 20s, so
Oh yeah, like us.
barely. So I started in high volume recruitment. I've always been internal and was working for a company called TSA, which is it's where all the good salespeople are made, I think. So that was super high volume, very low retention, and that's where I kind of learnt all of my kind of fundamental skills. But it wasn't very strategic, so I thought I want to pivot into a tech role. Started at a digital consultancy, and then learnt highly technical recruitment roles, and then got the opportunity to start at Go1, and I've been there since. So I've been there for about 2.5 years now.
Nice. That's a really good background. So you've been in internal recruitment for 10 years. So some would say that you are on the enemy side of the fence for us agency recruiters, but we'll go into what your relationship is like with agency recruiters. You gave us a little bit of a snapshot before when we were off air. So that'd be really interesting to learn. But at Go1, what I've noticed is you are definitely the face. I feel like you're very close to being the face of Go1. Like whenever I see Go1, I see your face always pop up. And it was interesting when we were talking before about your title and exactly what your responsibilities are on top of, the general kind of recruitment process. And I'm getting your title up now so I don't butcher it. Talent and Employer Brand Manager. Walk us through what an employer brand manager is.
Yeah, so essentially, like I mentioned before offline, I kind of created the job for myself. So I spend my days essentially building the top of funnel pipeline for our recruitment team. So what that looks like is running video campaigns. It is writing all of our copy, content, creating all of our job ads, really anything that is going to position Go1 as an employer of choice and attract the right people for our roles in our company.
So marketing, basically.
Yeah, recruitment marketing. So I sit somewhere between talent and marketing, and I bring the two together.
Where do you find your inspo from?
There's people that are definitely experts in the space, like James Ellis pops to mind. He is based out of the US and he's been doing employer branding for years and years. So a lot of it was self-taught. So just understanding what other people do, and then also getting inspo from other really great companies that have solid employer brands. So the ones that come to mind for me is Duolingo. They were one of the...
Duolingo?
Yeah. Do you know the app where you learn
Spanish or whatever? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But they have amazing branding, and they were one of the first people to start doing day in the life office TikToks. And then obviously Canva is a huge one as well. They have an amazing employer brand. Everyone wants to work for Canva.
Okay, so it's really interesting that you're a recruiter / a marketer, basically, is what I'm picking up here. And I've always, and there's kind of some sort of sentiment in the recruitment industry right now that the best recruiters are ultimately the best marketers. Because as the digital age evolves, we're going to have to, as recruiters, try and capture the attention of our specific target market. And unless you want to do one-to-one cold calls every single day, you need to start learning the skills of marketing. So it sounds like a really fitting responsibility that you've got in the recruitment space to like flex the marketing process. So just to kind of summarize what I think I understand you do is you just make Go1 look like an awesome place to work and you advertise it on LinkedIn. Do you do like paid ads or newsletters or anything like that? Like what are the steps that you take day to day to make Go1 look like a great employer of choice?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, though, a good employer brand needs to be authentic. So I feel good about promoting Go1 because it genuinely is a good place to work. I think where the problems come in with employer branding is if you are selling a dream that's not actually reality, and people realize that quite early on when they actually join the company, right? They're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. So you're going to do yourself no favors by doing that because, you know, you want the right people for your company. And I think a big misconception is that the goal is to attract the most amount of people to your company. And that's actually not the case. Like, I think a solid employer brand is you are so honest about what it means to work at your company. The good parts, the bad parts, everything in between. And we are quite honest about that at Go1. Like, we will say, like, it's not for everyone. We are a global company. There are some non-traditional work hours. If 9 to 5 is kind of the structure you're looking for, this is not the place for you. So we're very honest about that. But when I think of like initiatives that have really worked well for us, one that pops to mind would be an employee advocacy program that we did. So essentially the problem that we were having is because Go1 was relatively, like it's a relatively young company, right? We've only been around since 2015. And in the UK and the US, no one knew who we were essentially.
No.
So that was a huge problem for our recruiters. They're like, when we call people, they just don't know who we are. So we launched a advocacy program because we knew that people want to see content by the employees, right? There's like 500+% more reach that you will get with employee-led content versus company-led content. So we're like, let's rally like our advocates, people that already have a LinkedIn following, and create a bit of a group. We will give them the content that they can post or they can create their own. And then we did like a 3-month sprint. And there was obviously incentive for the people that were a part of the program as well. We gave like little vouchers for the best post. We got LinkedIn to come in and do like a personal brand workshop, and then we created the content for them. So, you know, for people that wanted to build their following but didn't really know how, it was like a win-win scenario.
And that community page on LinkedIn is massive. So then all the traffic feeds back in.
Yeah, 100%. And so we had like hashtags that they would use. And yeah, it was really successful. And they loved being a part of it as well. And we had like a little Slack channel. So we would get everyone to post their link to their LinkedIn post in the channel. So everyone got around them and like commented on their stuff, and that boosted engagement as well.
We should do that.
Yeah, we could.
I'm just listening to this going, great idea.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
great.
that's awesome.
And what was the difference from when you started and this role didn't exist, wasn't even a topic of conversation, to now 2 years? Like, are the recruiters finding it way easier to attract talent? Are people, are you attracting more A players? Like, do you know the change?
It's been, so our speed to hire has definitely gotten better, but I think as well, like our brand advocacy has increased hugely. So ultimately it enables the recruiters to do what they do because they're not having to worry about the attraction piece. So every role that we post, we naturally get like a lot of applications, but I think our efforts have definitely helped in generating that pipeline for sure.
Because yeah, it's just like Blake's philosophy, which I think rings true every time, is making Vendito marketable to recruiters. Because if you're focused, every business is focused on attracting clients, customer acquisition, which is always expensive. But like in agency land, if you can attract a 4, 5, 6, 700K biller, they're going to add way more value as opposed to trying to attract 4, 5, 6, 700K of jobs from new clients. It'd be way more expensive.
100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of recruiters don't leverage their own LinkedIn.
Yep.
Do you find that?
Yeah, recruiters are like not great marketers, but they need to be, because like we're all in the business of marketing ourselves and getting eyeballs on us, the right eyeballs, and then engaging them and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of recruiters, they kind of get a little bit, oh, that's not me. I feel awkward. It's cheesy, or, something that they just feel strange for, putting up a little post. I've seen a couple of your posts before and they're awesome, but I'm assuming that it's a skill that you've learnt over time. Like, how did you go from recruiter to then going, okay, I'm going to have to really pump like my own personal content to, be the trailblazer of this new movement of Go1 to attract more candidates? Was it a gradual increase of confidence and creativity, or was it you just naturally good at it, or?
Bit of both. So my previous manager, Sam, she actually probably started the habit. She was like, I want you posting 3 times a week. And at the start I was like, didn't really know what to post. So I was like trying to make up things. But that kind of instilled the habit of actually being consistent with it. And then I started to actually enjoy it. So I thought, like, I'm naturally quite creative. So I started to enjoy like creating different topics that I could post about. And so it was kind of an organic evolution for me. But yeah, there's certainly been times where I've posted things and, had like spicy comments on my posts.
Really?
Like
you got
what?
any
Like
memories?
what?
There was one post, and like, you should stay away from politics. That's my biggest learning from that post. But it was when the Albanese government changed the laws where employers would have to be more transparent about pay. And I personally think that's a great thing. I think transparency around pay is awesome, especially for like women and underrepresented communities. But obviously that snowballed into like this huge debate about government and politics. So that was probably one of my learnings, is kind of stay away from that. But yeah, there's definitely been times where I'm like, I can't be bothered posting, or I don't want to put myself out there. But you've just got to push through that.
Yep. Did you learn from LinkedIn this personal branding thing, or was there any workshops, or like was there anything that you did to upskill that anyone listening could be like, oh, that's a great idea, I'm going to go do that now and become better at this? Was there anything that you did specifically, or was it just experience trying?
It was just a bit of trying and seeing what worked for other people. Like, I've never really delved too deep into the algorithms and everything like that. Like, I know that the LinkedIn experts, they know so much about that, and I'm definitely not an expert in that. I just liked talking about topics that I'm passionate about, and naturally kind of built a community around that. And I think as well, I always give the advice that when you are starting to build your personal brand, you should pick 3 pillars that you're consistently going to talk about. For me, it's Go1 branded content, employer branding, and candidate experience. And I just cycle between those 3 pillars. So when I'm feeling creative, I will create like a bunch of different posts, schedule them on LinkedIn. So for those weeks that I'm not feeling like, creative, or feeling like I want to actually share my thoughts, it's all done for me. So I think that's a good place to start, is just understanding actually what you enjoy talking about and sticking to those things. Because I think when you start going too broad and you're delving into topics that you actually don't know much about, that's when you can sometimes run into trouble.
Yeah, that's very true. So what's your process? You've got these 3 topics, and what happens next?
So I think there's so many different tools that we have now which can give you inspiration, like Chat GPT. But I just like, when things come to my mind, I just write them down like in a little notes folder. And then I try to have it be either educational, like humorous, or it's like a photo or video content. So it kind of keeps it fresh, and you're not always just posting one format. So that's what I personally do. And then I think as well, if you're a recruiter, where you can start is just by showing up to events, taking photos, making a post about it. So I think starting little and then evolving from there.
I think the thing that recruiters struggle with most is because recruitment's so intangible. Like, not everyone has a physical office, not like it's the same thing day in, day out. It's not like a real estate agent where the whole industry is known for marketing because there's all these
Go take a photo
houses,
of the house,
cars,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So I think that's probably the biggest
That's true.
hurdle to get over. That's what I found.
Yeah, finding something tangible to take a photo of or a video of that relates to whatever the story is that you're talking about. So what are the metrics of success as a brand employer manager? Did I get that right? Brand
Yeah.
employer manager.
Well,
like
employer brand manager.
employer
but
brand manager,
close.
sorry. Yeah. I knew it didn't sound right when I said it. So what are the metrics of success? Like, how do you know you are moving the dial in this kind of new role that you've created?
That's a really good question, and it is quite a controversial one, and many people have different thoughts on it because there are definitely vanity metrics. And I think with employer branding, it is a long game, like it is a slow burn. Like I saw a stat the other day, sometimes it takes a candidate 60 interactions before they would apply for a job. So
60.
they might, yeah. And whether that be like a piece of content or a person that they know working for the company sharing something. So it is a slow burn, but some of the metrics that you could look at, for example, would be company followers, job views and application numbers, speed to hire, and then quality of hire would be kind of the fundamental metrics that you'd be looking at.
Yeah. And how much of your role is focused on recruitment / the marketing side of things? Is it 50-50 or?
Yeah, it would be 50-50, and it flexes up and down. Like if we are going through a particularly, busy period, I might lean more into recruitment just to get roles filled.
Yeah.
But generally it's 50-50, which is amazing because it gives me so much variety. Like I can flex both sides of my brain. Like I love recruitment and I would never want to step away from recruitment if I'm being honest. But that makes me an even better employer branding manager because I'm on the ground actually talking to candidates. Like I know what's important to them and what they're looking for in their role. And then I can use that really valuable information to craft employer branding campaigns to attract those people.
Sorry.
I was about to say that kind of moves me on to a new topic, which is your relationship with agency recruiters, because there's a I don't know, what would you call it? A feeling from agency recruiters that you're the gatekeeper of us being able to do our jobs. And we feel that, and hopefully I'm not going to talk for everyone here, but like a talent acquisition manager ultimately wants to keep you at arm's length because they go, no, this is my job. I'm probably going to be better at it than you. It's going to come out of my budget. I've got to make sure I have a level of self-worth at this business where if they expect me to do it and then I'm getting a recruiter to do it, does it lessen my self-worth or all these kind of things? Like I'm just saying what I think is true, but we're going to hear firsthand from you now to understand kind of what your relationship is with recruiters and how it affects your role.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. I personally very much value agency recruiters. Firstly, the hustle. Secondly, like it's a tough gig. But as well, I think with internal recruiters, and this might be a blanket statement, but generally we have like a very, a portfolio that is quite varied. So we're generalists and we normally recruit across like a wide range of roles in the organisation, whereas I see the role of agency recruiters to be more specialised. So if I'm looking for a specific role that I'm not able to fill, I know exactly like who I could go to, and they're going to have like a portfolio of candidates that are maybe not even in market. So I see so much value in agency recruiters.
Interesting. So what you're saying is there's no value in a generalist recruiter for you because you are the generalist recruiter.
Yeah.
Where you would consider a recruiter is someone that's like hyper niche and specialized to be able to fill this role.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, that's
like
interesting.
I'm probably not going to use a recruiter for a junior payroll specialist, for example.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking for like a senior product manager, that's when I would lean into a recruiter.
So do you Google like what's a really niche role that you've needed a recruiter for?
Oh, well, to be honest, at Go1, it's very rare.
You've never used a recruiter.
No, we have. Not so much anymore, just because we've been able to fill most of our roles ourselves. Maybe the employer branding has helped.
It's working.
But I know that we would definitely probably look at a recruiter for like cybersecurity, for example.
Okay, so would you what is your next steps as a talent acquisition manager to find a cybersecurity recruiter? Do you Google?
I probably wouldn't. I would probably reach out to friends in the industry and say, hey, we've got this role. Do you know anyone specialised in this particular area? Because I've been in tech for a while, like I do know a lot of recruiters in the space. So that's generally what I would do. Definitely before Googling.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to figure out if you should be running ads?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to get in your mind of like, if I was a talent acquisition manager and I didn't, if you've got existing relationships that have been built over years, you would go there first, definitely. But I'm just thinking, if I'm a recruiter and I'm going after some business in some aspect, I'd go, all right, I need to position myself as an expert in whatever niche it is that they're recruiting. So at least I'll get a foot in the door with Lexia in that point if I position myself like that. But second, if I was a TAM, I'm just going to use the word TAM. If I was a TAM and I didn't have a network specific to this niche, like, I don't know, maybe I'd LinkedIn, cyber security recruiter, and then I'd try and find someone on LinkedIn first before Googling, or is like Googling you stay away from because you've got to go through the company and then find a contact, and then is there any point in maybe being at SEO, like SEOing being the best cybersecurity recruiter on SEO, which costs a fortune, but isn't something that naturally people would Google first? I'm just trying to, I guess, understand the workflow of how that would happen.
Yeah, that's true. And I think as well, a lot of the time, internal recruiters will try to run a campaign before they would engage an agency, right? Because you've got to give it a red hot crack. If you don't find the one, that's when you would engage an agency.
Yeah.
So I think as well for agency recruiters, like if you see an ad that's been open for a bit, slide into the DMs of the...
Well, no, actually, because you said just before that you would never respond to someone in the DMs.
Okay.
You would take a phone call though.
I would,
which
take
is
a
really
phone call.
interesting.
In like the hierarchy, it's phone call, DM, cold email. But if it's...
Just to clarify, DM on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not on Instagram.
Just a little TikTok DM.
Imagine that.
Oh, God.
It's happened before. No, but I think if it's hyper-personalized, like, hey, saw that you're recruiting for X role at Go1. This is what I know about Go1. This is what I know about you. Can we have a 5-minute chat? Sweet. I'm going to make the time for you. If it's not personalized, if they've done no prior research into Go1, me, my role at Go1, or the role, then it's probably not going to happen.
How much do recruiters actually call versus DM and email?
Not much.
Not many call.
Like, for example, I did a post about agency recruiters probably like a couple of months ago, just saying that, like, I'd always make time for a call, right? Guess how many people actually called me off the back of that? 2.
Really?
Because everyone was commenting saying, like, oh, what have you done? Like, people are going to be, like, calling you, RIP phone. 2 people. And that was, like, opening the doors to be like...
You were inviting everyone to give you a call.
Right? And my
2 people
number's on
called
LinkedIn.
you. Yeah.
Because I call recruiters about ex-recruiter and they get really spun out that a recruiter's calling. They're like, mate, I'm at work. Like, I can't speak about this. I'm like, dude, you do this for a job. You do this to candidates all the time.
Right?
So then it got me thinking, like, I don't think rec-to-recs even actually call anyone. And then I started asking partners, like, nah, mate, I just get DMs all the time.
People are afraid to pick up the phone.
Afraid.
Or my favorite one, when you call someone and they're like, oh, I'm just about to jump into a meeting. Why would you answer your phone?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like a random time too. You're like, this doesn't seem like a normal meeting time. It's like 8:17. Oh, I'm just about to jump into a meeting. I'm like, okay, have you got 13 minutes? Or and they're like, oh, okay. Okay, interesting. So you've got a good relationship with recruiters if they call you. You give them the time of day. Not many recruiters actually call you though, which is really surprising.
Yeah.
And a little bit disappointing really, because that's what we get paid to do, is to pick the phone up. I think a lot of recruiters these days are just, cold emails.
Oh,
Cold emails, cross their
100%.
fingers.
And actually, I did have 2 people reach out creatively, which I loved. One left me a voice note on LinkedIn,
Oh, yeah, nice.
which was pretty cool.
Yeah, good.
And then another person recorded like a Loom video, just introducing themselves and what they did. So
Did you get back to them?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think any way that you can use a point of difference to stand out, why not try it?
Yeah, great idea. Okay, so if there are any recruiters out there that are interested to find out what it's like to have a VA support them in their role, whether that be to bill more, reduce tasks that they don't enjoy doing, or be a more effective recruiter in their niche, then we definitely recommend reaching out to the Outsource People or TOP. Reach out to them, inquire on how they can implement a VA in your agency and to support you. And if you mention ex-recruiter or Confessions of a Recruiter, they will give you a 13% discount off your bill per month on this VA that will allow you to scale your business, scale your desk, and to bill more and make more money. So go reach out to the Outsource People, say Confession sent you, get your discount, and see what is possible. Do you have a budget?
So generally, the way it works, like at Go1 and most companies, is it will come out of the hiring manager's budget.
Okay.
So yeah, it generally sits with them. And then our goal as like a talent acquisition function is to fill the roles ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't come out of their budget. But I guess you'd have
Yeah.
a bad relationship with the hiring manager if you can never fill any of their roles. And they're like, dude,
Yeah.
you're smashing my budget at the moment. Can you just fill some yourself?
100%. So yeah, that definitely does happen, and that's when you would have a business case. Normally they would want you to run like a campaign first, but if you are unable to fill the role, yeah, we would definitely explore recruiters.
Okay.
How many recruiters do you have for a 600-person company?
So we have 5 recruiters globally. So there's 2 in APAC, I'm one of them. We've got 2 in the US and then 2 in Europe. So
Interesting.
that's 6, but one of them is our VP of talent.
Yeah, gotcha. And so what's the workload like? Six recruiters, 600 employees. Like, how many roles are you filling per month?
Generally about 4 per month, which is like quite low.
Yeah.
But we will generally manage about 5 to 8 roles. We try to have 6 as like the goal, because we personally think like anything above that, you're not providing like an end-to-end experience. And that's when candidate experience starts to be affected. Because if you're managing a portfolio of 6, you're doing like a really deep job with that. You are headhunting on LinkedIn, you are running like a really solid campaign, you are providing feedback to candidates, you are like partnering with the hiring managers to really understand the role. And you are also like interviewing a lot of people to get to that one. So
What tools do you have? Do you have like a ATS?
yes, so we do. We use Greenhouse.
Greenhouse. I haven't heard of that.
No.
Yeah, it's an American one, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's a really good ATS. But we have the best of the best. Like we have recruiter licenses and ATS. We use a lot of like Canva for our marketing assets. And then what else do we use? We use,
Do you use AI?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. Yes.
In what regard? Like, what do you use AI for?
So normally our candidate comms. So I actually configured like our own chat GPT for all things employer branding at Go1. So essentially I configured our own. I put in a bunch of information about Go1 into the chat GPT, which was like a 6-page document. And so our team can use that to be like, create 5 really interesting messages for engineers. And so it will incorporate our EVP, our brand messaging, and then it will spit out like brand aligned messages. So that's one thing that you can do.
So for an outreach to an engineer, it'll say something creative about your company and why they
Yeah.
should work there as an engineer.
yeah.
Cool.
So agency recruiters could do that.
Yeah.
If they get like a 2-pager from a client, configure their own ChatGPT, and then create like really personalized messages that incorporate solid information about the company as well.
Yeah. What about your relationship with hiring managers? I know for recruiters, especially contingent recruiters, the general rule of thumb is if you're doing a BD call into 3 hiring managers, 3 hiring managers give you a PD and said, yeah, you can recruit my role, I've got other recruiters on it. Generally, you're filling 1 in 3 jobs. So 66% of your time, you're actually wasting your time, unfortunately, just because of statistics.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with hiring managers? Are you filling every job, or do you find yourself, is there some hiring manager that's just a punish and they don't know how to interview properly and they keep burning candidates, or what's that like for you?
Yeah, because I think internal recruiters do go through the same challenges that agency recruiters go through. Like you're chasing up feedback, you have a hiring manager that's running late for an interview, you're like, this isn't a good look for the candidate. So we definitely go through the same hurdles. I would say though, for me, I'm pretty lucky to work with some amazing hiring managers at Go1. And I think the best part of being in an internal function is you get to work really closely with them, like be a bit more strategic in the fact that you're not just thinking about the role that you have in front of you. You're like, what will your team need in, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time? Let's start to create a bit of a talent pool for the critical roles that you will need. And you just learn how to work with each other. Like there's trust that gets built through that relationship. And because you're a little bit closer, like they're a colleague rather than a client, you can be a little bit more, I guess, honest, and you can demand a little bit more. Like if someone isn't providing a good candidate experience, you can have that conversation with them.
That's probably where the good recruiters do that though.
Yeah.
Up front. Yeah.
Good
That's
agency recruiters will like prep the client and go, all right, if you want this person on board, like you need to say this, this, and this, and you need to dive into this because it's really important to them, and kind of give them a prep to go, like, let's work together here to see if we can get this person.
That's interesting. That's awesome though.
Yeah.
So what would be like the biggest challenges that agency recruiters would face with hiring managers?
I think being a business equal.
Yeah.
I think there's a strong kind of servant-master relationship with poor performing recruiters where there's no pushback and it's like, oh, yes, all right. Or they'll be like, that guy's shit. And they won't be like, well, hang on a second. You said this, this, and this. They tick these boxes. So, like, what's the issue? And then most of the time they'll turn around and go, you're probably right. I was just getting a bit of a gut feel off the resume. And you're like, yeah, I get it. But like, the boxes are ticked now. There's no reason for you not to meet them. And then if you can kind of hold them to their own standard and their own brief, then you should be able to get a lot more out of the hiring manager. And I think hiring managers like being challenged in a professional, logical, practical way. But I think one of the biggest challenges for agency recruiters, especially post-COVID agency recruiters, they're typically, somewhat order takers in the sense where the client's always right. The client wants this, and there won't be any kind of pushback on the brief. It's like, oh, you want someone for 100? Oh, I don't think you're going to get that, mate. Like, can we move this brief? Or, hey, look, candidate said X, Y, Z. Is there any reason why you're going through this? It's really turning candidates off. Obviously, don't lie in interviews, but you don't want to put the microscope on something that will clearly turn candidates off, especially when you can talk about all these amazing benefits that they'll probably be interested in as well. But I think that's probably the main, like the long story of what the main challenge is for agency recruiters. What is the biggest challenge for you in internal recruitment?
The biggest challenge would probably be hiring managers not actually knowing what they want.
Yeah, that's what I was about to talk about, because until I sat in on client interviews, you didn't realize how many of your clients didn't know how to run an interview.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to sell themselves, like most candidates. They don't know how to sell the company. They don't know how to have a structured process. And then that's why you get this gut feeling situation where you're like, I thought this guy was going to kill it. And then they come back and they're like, yeah, no, it wasn't it. And then it wasn't until you actually sit in on interviews, you realize like these hiring managers, they get put in leadership roles and they just get lumped with, oh, you got to make the team.
Oh, 100%. And as well, because they're not recruiters, right? They need structured guidance on how to run a in-depth recruitment process. So, for example, they're like putting candidates through 5 rounds of interviews, but they're asking essentially the same questions at each round. It's like, okay, let's like reverse engineer what competencies do you actually need for this role, and then how can we make sure that each person that's a part of the panel, if you're wanting to have 4 people, is assessing for different things. Like, so I think it's partnering with them to understand best practices, but also, like you said, pushing back when you need to and kind of coaching them through how to run a slick interview, how to give constructive feedback, how to give any objective feedback, and then, creating like a good candidate experience in general.
Would hiring managers ever come to you? And it's a really good point. Like, a lot of hiring managers just get put into a leadership role, and then all of a sudden they've got to figure out how to do an interview and they don't actually know how to do it, and they've got to wing it. Like, I reckon that would be at least the majority of hiring managers.
Heaps. They've got no leadership training. They've got no interview training. Never sell themselves.
So do you ever get hiring managers like be upfront and be like, how do you interview this person? What should I be saying? How do I conduct this interview? Or are they just kind of going, oh, fuck, all right, let's just figure this out on the go?
A great bloke to sit there and with no ego and go, hey, I've never actually done this before. I just got promotion and a 20 grand pay rise.
Yeah. And I've never interviewed anyone. Well, to be fair, like, I appreciate someone that is like that and is curious and is like, look, I don't actually know help, rather than just trying to wing it and, asking rogue questions that have nothing to do with, like, those archaic questions, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Or
that's not a good question.
Not my favorite. Not my favorite.
What are your strengths and weaknesses?
Oh. What are some other really rogue questions that people used to ask?
Oh, I don't even know.
I mean, there's the
strengths and weaknesses. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yeah. What kind of management style do you work best under?
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
I reckon I've never heard anyone not say, well, I don't like to be micromanaged. Yeah. I think that's just the most obvious answer.
Yeah, the lame question and the lame answer back.
Yeah. Quality of answer comes down to quality of question.
Oh, that's very true. Well, what's like a solid question then that you would always ask people that work for you?
What is a standard question that I ask?
I go through, what's the toughest experience you've ever experienced in your life?
Oh, and do you get some really deep answers? Because I feel like people could be surface level with that, or they could delve into like their childhood trauma.
Yeah, usually they go
straight to breakups.
or cancer or whatever's happened.
Wow. And why do you ask that? Is that just to see how resilient they are and what they've been through?
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially when you're recruiting salespeople. Like,
true.
If they've, not much has happened. They've never had to bounce back. They've never had to. Sport, I think, is closely associated to the success of a recruiter.
Yeah.
Like where you've been in competition.
Yeah.
You can accept feedback on the fly.
Yeah.
But if you've never actually been in sport and, like a coach is yelling at you for years when you're like, hands up, catch the ball. And you're like, oh, shit. But you can't like give feedback to someone these days.
Are you speaking from experience there, mate? I feel like we've just unlocked something. Hands up, Dick.
And here he is.
Yeah, that's it. And now he's always got his hands up.
Hands up, always be ready. Yeah, I like the helicopter view. Like getting to know them as a person, I think, is more important than because most of the time, like, you just got to get to the cracks of it.
Yeah, and I think have you seen a shift between, how maybe like 5 years ago, it was how is this interviewee going to impress me as an interviewer? And now it's like a shift of how am I going to impress them as equally as, I get what I need out of this interview. And I think it's more of a two-way conversation now. It's more casual. Like very rarely now would I go into an interview and I'm like, powering through these 10 set of questions like back in the day. Now I feel like you get the most out of a flowing casual conversation.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
We like to mix up locations as well. It's like, hey, come not for
you sit on that side of the desk, I'll sit on this side.
No, but I think you had a different experience when you take them for a coffee or get them away from the office.
Yeah, that's true. And where would you take them? Just to like
coffee
a local
shop.
cafe?
Yeah.
Coffee shop. Take them on for a run.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Get this. No, Declan's literally taken someone for a run before.
On the first meet.
It wasn't a candidate.
He ended up being one.
Yeah, well, so like he came in and he's like, "Oh mate, just want to have a chat to you about the business, blah blah blah." He's like,
He was trying to sell me.
he was like, "Well, I'm about to go for a run, mate. So why don't you just come for a run with me and we'll talk about it?" And he's gone, "Okay." He's running with his Vans on and he's like 3/4 shorts, and they go for a 5K run while he's trying to talk to him about this product.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious.
That is commitment though.
I reckon that
man's
is impressive.
sweating in his Vans and his jorts.
Yeah, just goes for a 5K run, like literally in a minute of striking up a conversation.
It didn't door knock us and be like, all right, let's go on a run. He reached out.
The story sounds
better with a bit of spice from
Don't
Blake.
let the truth get in the way of the story, mate.
Oh, and you hired him?
Yeah.
And did it work out?
No, he didn't run fast enough.
It didn't, but he was good. Like,
Yeah.
but no, it didn't work out. It just wasn't right timing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, funny. Like,
It was years apart from when we went for a run.
yeah,
So when we-
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it was like a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I think mixing up the location is important, and it's good because I've done a lot of interviews in the office and a lot of interviews out of the office, and out of the office is always a little bit more. You can
They let the guard down.
let the guard down a little bit. How often do you do interviews in person?
Oh, very rarely these days. Like I would say most of them are done over Zoom. And that's because like my portfolio isn't just in Australia. I recruit a lot in the US and Asia. So it's mostly over Zoom, but I won't lie, I do love like a good coffee catch up. So if they're based in Brisbane, like before they start, I will always offer like, let's go for a coffee or come to the office. I'll show you around, because I think the more that you can solidify their connection to you or your brand between that offer and the start date, the stickier they're going to become and the more engaged they're going to be, and hopefully not drop out.
Actually, you've just mentioned something that's triggered something in my mind, is recruiting in the US and then recruiting in Asia, recruiting in Australia. What are the key differences to recruiting in these different regions from a hiring manager standpoint and a candidate standpoint? Like, what is there anything that stands out that you're like, geez, these Yanks are just so much easier to talk to, or they're so much more difficult and intense, or the Asia market, they're so much more, I don't know, introverted, and you really got to try and dig deep to get them out of their shell. Like, what are the big differences in all these different regions?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think geographical locations are all going to have their own little nuances and ways of doing business as well. Like in Singapore, Vietnam and Malaysia, they're very hierarchical. So that they're very formal when they show up to interviews. Like when you're doing job offers, it's very kind of formal. Whereas the US, they are very, I love people in the US, by the way. But unlike Australia, where you're kind of, it's more, we're humble as like a society. Like tall poppy syndrome, for example. Like no one likes self-promotion in Australia. Whereas the US, that's kind of a part of their identity. So they are very like out there when it comes to,
I'm the best, man. You're like, whoa, all right.
You got me.
I'm going to kill this role, man. I'm the best candidate you'll ever speak to.
Oh, 100%. Like you kind of feel like you're being sold to some of the time.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Because I've got their elevated pitch, and because everyone in the US is about like networking and connections, and they're so used to talking about themselves and promoting themselves, which is great. And then Australia, obviously, we like to build a bit of rapport before we jump into it. We're quite casual. We're not very self-promotional, and we're quite humble, I would say. So, yeah, it is different depending on where you are recruiting in the world, and there's obviously different market challenges and stuff that you face as well.
I was about to say, what about the hiring managers? Are they much different? Do you have hiring managers in the US?
Yeah. I would say generally not.
Okay.
We run a pretty similar process.
Yeah. Okay.
How much commercially invested or understanding do you guys have to learn about your hiring managers' positions? Because like as agency recruiters, for you to have a lot of cut through and ways to pique the interest of hiring managers, you commercially understand the business, the role that they play in the business. So then you can justify your fee, you can justify the return on investment, and you can have a lot of cut through with the right people. We call it like language of leaders. So is it, do you know that about all your hiring managers and their budgets, their KPIs, what matters to them, what doesn't, the risk profile that they have?
Probably not as in depth, but we definitely know, I guess, the types of people that work well in their team, generally the types of people that they're looking for, their critical roles and the roles that are going to like move their team forward. In terms of like their own KPIs, generally they are tied to kind of the team. So we would know that. But I would say to be a good recruiter, though, you should have a really good understanding of the hiring manager's role because you need to speak their language. Is that kind of how you guys approach things?
Yeah. Because, sorry, I'll let you go, Dave.
Because what a lot of recruiters, they just find like, hey, how can I put a bum on a seat? And, you know, it's like, oh, I've got this really great guy, he's got a personality and blah, blah, blah. But if you're like, hey, mate, commercially, this is what matters to you. You're a new CTO, you're building out a team, XYZ, we need to get the foundational teams right. You know, what do you like as a leader? As much as I'm selling Go1, like I need to sell you to these candidates as well. So like all those points of difference is what we chat about when we're in front of clients.
Yeah.
To be, you know, have cut through, be a step ahead.
Yeah, it's like a credibility piece. So as like extending on what Dex just said, as an agency recruiter, you got to build credibility and rapport really, really fast to get a hiring manager to trust an external provider in 1 or 2 phone calls. And so an easy way to do that is to speak their language.
Yeah.
And their language specifically being, you know, what is the outcome of a successful person in this role? What is it going to do for your budget? What is it going to do for your targets? What is it going to do for
delegation,
bottom line?
Yeah.
And if we get this wrong, then what does that mean? And they go, oh shit, well if we get it wrong, that means, you know, we still have 50 accounts that aren't going to get looked after, and then it's going to potentially create churn in my account base. It could cost me millions. You go, okay, so this role could potentially cost you millions. That's how significant this role is. We shouldn't just be trying to match up skills on a job brief. We need to be making sure that, you know, this is the outcome we're avoiding. This is the outcome that we're looking for, regardless of the candidate. These are the outcomes. And then when they hear that, they're going, okay, yeah, this is the outcomes I'm looking for. I actually don't give a shit about the candidate. I care about the outcomes. And then all of a sudden you can start going, hey, you know the outcomes that you were looking for? This person will deliver those outcomes. And then it's not like, oh, did they go to university on the south side, or do they live in this region, or do they want this salary? It's like, no, these are the outcomes that you're after, right? Like, oh yeah, it is actually. Then great. This is the person for you. Then you kind of take it away from just ticking boxes.
Yeah.
So that's a good kind of way to stand out as an agency recruiter, to build trust and rapport quickly, rather than, you know, I'm sure you get a lot of cold DMs where it's like, hey, you're looking for a cyber expert. You know, I've got a person that's in cyber that would be great to talk to. Want to chat to them? And it's like, okay, see ya. You know, and it's really not that empowering or, you know, impactful. Just to extend on that.
That's interesting. Just on that, do you guys still have hiring managers that will only accept a bachelor's degree?
Nah.
We recruit salespeople.
Yeah, our industry is not really educational focused.
Gotcha.
It's more personality fit. It's more results driven. Most of the brief is that we typically get is, let's say if it's, you know, they're trying to find a salesperson that sells telco.
Yeah.
They'd go, if you can find someone that has sold telco before, then that's a obvious, easy box tick to be worth meeting.
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't really care about a degree or anything along those lines.
Gotcha.
But is that similar to you guys, or?
I would say it depends on the hiring manager. The US is definitely more kind of still degree focused and tertiary education focused, but I guess the whole ethos of Go1 is that, you know,
we're a learning platform.
Yeah, a learning platform.
True.
And democratizing education so that not just people that had a tertiary education can learn. So I think there are definitely, I think we're coming in a long way in terms of moving away from, you know, must have a degree. Because ultimately, like I see it in our engineering team, they will sometimes prefer people that have done like a 12-month boot camp in developing over someone that's done a 4-year degree at university, because by the time they graduate, the technology is all old. Whereas someone that goes through like a hyper intense boot camp, you know, they're coding with the newest technology and their skills are like emerging technology skills. So
Interesting.
It's interesting, and I wonder if degrees or tertiary education will have a place to play in like business. Obviously, you know, doctors and lawyers, they still need to go to uni, let's be real, but
Is there any training for recruiters on the Go1 platform? Can a recruiter listening right now just like log into Go1, pay a bit of money and start learning how to be a recruiter?
Yeah.
Or be a better recruiter?
yeah, there's definitely recruitment content on there. There's, you know, over 150,000 courses on the platform. So anything that you want to learn, from like how to make a great coffee to specialize like airline training for attendants. There's literally anything that you'd like to learn.
So if we wanted to put our course on Go1,
You can do that as well.
we
yeah.
can do that. And
Really?
We'd probably be the number one training recruitment.
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah. So it is a marketplace. So you would be like a content partner.
Yeah.
But our content partners get paid per minute of content consumed on the platform. So it's like a win-win scenario.
How much do you get paid?
It depends how many people access your course.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So it works like YouTube.
exactly. Yeah.
And then the famous debate of work from home.
Yes.
You guys all work from home.
Yeah.
Nike came out the other day, the head of creative, and said he apologized for their lack of creativity because everyone works from home now.
Here's my 2 cents on working from home.
Okay, you go.
A lot of skills and creativity is developed from indirect conversation in the office.
Yeah.
A lot of, you know, like random overhearing someone and go, oh, I heard you talking about that, this, and that. And then they go, oh, yeah, but we're doing it like this. And you're like, oh, what a great idea. Cool. And you're making a coffee or something, or you're sitting at your desk, you overhear a conversation.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like indirect learning that I feel happens in an office. And if you don't have people to bounce stuff off like randomly, like I'll be sitting there, I don't know, typing an email, and I'll just yell across the desk, whether this is right or wrong. People hate this. I'm like, hey, what's going on with, you know, this certain topic? What's the go there again? They go, oh, the X, Y, Z. And I'll go, oh, that's right. And then I'll be able to kind of continue on my maturity of whatever topic I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Whereas you're not going to just like call someone and be like, oh, excuse me, hey, can I borrow a few minutes? What's going on with this, and this, and then continue to mature these kind of thoughts and ideas. And I feel that lacks quite, I don't know, I don't really actually work from home, but I think, I think that would be a really big missing piece of the puzzle for me, being able to have these ad hoc conversations to learn and grow and mature and develop. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you in that sense. I think it's more important early on in your career to be in an environment where you are maybe more in person or hybrid. Because I think back to my days starting in recruitment, like I learned pretty much everything from other people who were doing it. And like constantly refining my craft based off like, you know, what they were saying and how I could incorporate that into my little pitch. So I think people that are early on in their career and they're learning those fundamental, like, you know, even just professional etiquette, how to show up, how to conversate with people, how to build connections, how to network. I think it's important in those early stages. And then, yes, I think as you kind of move on in your career a little bit, you do seek a little bit more flexibility to be able to do other things in life that's important to you if you start a family or you want to do the school pick up or drop off.
Get your hair done in the arbor.
Get your hair done, get your nails done.
So that's really what work from home's for.
Yes.
It's not actually to be more productive.
It's to be able to do that life admin things through the day that you don't have the chance to do because you're working.
The laundry.
Yeah, the laundry, yeah.
So yeah, that's my stance. But like I see pros and cons. I'm probably a fence sitter. But one of the pros of obviously work from home is that you can tap into people that don't live in a metropolitan area.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like there is a lot of talent that like maybe just can't get to the office. And you got to be more flexible with that. But I just think from a general rule of thumb, being in the office, you're going to get the vibes more. You're going to be able to connect more.
Osmosis is a massive thing.
What's osmosis?
Well, like what Blake explained, just being around people.
Oh, the
Yeah.
energy, the vibe.
Yeah, you get better by osmosis. Like if you are, let's say you're a 5 out of 10 smart and there's like 3 10 out of 10 smart sitting next to you all day, you don't even have to do anything and you will naturally just increase your intelligence because you're like absorbing conversations of other people. And
Oh
so
my
you get
God.
better by osmosis. So the more intelligent people you hang around, just naturally it brings your average up.
That's why I say you are who you hang around.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on work from home then?
Yeah, I can't stand it.
Really?
Wait, from a personal standpoint or from like other people to do it standpoint? Because
From a
we're talking,
personal
we're talking
standpoint.
from a work from home worker right now, mate.
Mm.
Yeah, I just
Don't offend our guest.
no, for me personally, I can't get around it.
Yeah.
I just get too distracted. I think like, yeah, when you come into work, you're like game face on,
Yeah.
and you're ready to go.
So has that ever been a deal breaker then for getting recruiters to work for you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And do they try to negotiate? Are they like, oh, okay, maybe just one day from home?
Yeah.
I honestly say in the interview, I go, look, mate, if you want to work from home, you're not for us. So what's your stance on work from
Yeah.
home? They go, oh, I'm happy to work in the office. I'm like, great, let's continue the interview.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Because
I love
and it's
that.
like, and we're such a foundational business, like having the camaraderie, knowing everyone's got each other's back, and everyone's in this together on the same mission. I
Yeah.
think that's way more important. If you're like a, massive company and everything's set up.
I think we're kind of maybe a little bit biased in the sense that our role is really energy, client facing, communication, all this kind of stuff. Like the boys over in the creative department that do video editing and like logo design and all that kind of stuff, there's probably a strong case to be like, I can just do the exact same work because I need to dial in and not speak to anyone
True.
and pump my work out. So there's probably a far more attractive case study for like
Yeah.
a software developer or, these types of roles that you're probably familiar with Go1. But
Yeah.
I guess we're coming at it from a sales lens where it's like, no, everyone needs to be around each other and
Yeah.
communicating
learning
and
I guess that high energy environment. Have you done like a pilot where you measured productivity levels working from home versus in office?
Yeah, we can see it across partners.
What about, okay, here's a spanner in the works.
Oh,
What
here we
about
go.
Dan in Sydney?
Yeah, so there's exceptions to the rule. And they're the 1%ers. They don't come around very often.
True, yeah.
There's been one or two
We've-
people in our businesses that have absolutely lit it up day in, day out, self-motivated, work from home, and just absolutely crush it.
Yeah.
But they're very, very rare.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That's a bit of a 1%er.
Yeah, 1%er. It's a special art.
So we just need more of him then.
We just need to find heaps of 1%ers.
But but like you said, like that experience.
Yeah. All right. Are we going to do the question? Have we got questions?
Did you write some on?
No, I didn't. I thought you've done a couple of them. So what we do here
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
as a really nice way to kind of like wrap things up is we have a bunch of questions on our ex-recruiter card. Ex-recruiter, for those listening, helps you start your own recruitment agency. But on the ex-recruiter card, just a little
Never knew
plug
that.
there. Yeah, never knew that.
Cheeky plug.
Mate, just make sure you cut that up into a little reel for me, all right? And get your feedback, and then you've got to actually write a question for the next guest.
Oh, very diary of a CEO vibes.
Yes. Yeah.
Love it.
All right, what do you got for us, Deck?
What has gone really wrong in a interview, and how did you fix it?
Wow. Okay. One thing that pops to mind is just a guy who unloaded all of his life trauma onto me. Like, we're talking deep. We're talking lots of things that and this was back in the day when I was stuck in a room with this person. So I couldn't like escape. It's not like I could just wrap up the Zoom call because I was trying to wrap it up and he was just not picking up my vibe. So it would probably be that. But how I turned it around was literally like, I've got to dash. I let him down very gently because I was like, I need to handle this with like hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
Because obviously we can't hire him, but also like, we want to be able to provide really objective feedback so that he doesn't take it the wrong way. So I think that was also a lot of pressure because it's like, how do you reject someone that's already going through like a really hard time? So yeah.
Tough. That's interesting.
Yeah. Do you guys have any like wild interview experiences?
Well, I've got one. It's probably not an interview experience, but it's an experience with someone that was going through the interview process. And I've actually told it before, but it's probably my go-to. So I had a guy that used to work for me at Vendito, and he was conducting interviews with this candidate. The role was a security salesperson. And so up in northern Queensland, and basically the job was going around selling security systems to schools, hospitals, etc. And so the person that used to work for me, he's like screened this guy, sounded really, really good, blah, 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 put him forward. Client was like, yeah, he looks all right, and then Googled him. And then Google came up with basically he used to be a news reporter, or he used to be in like on the TV or something. And there is a article about him that he sexually assaulted a minor. And it was the first things that came up in these news articles. And so the client's called up and has said, hey, mate, have you Googled this guy? So they've jumped on Google. He's come up, sexually assaulting a minor, blah, blah, blah. And then so my old employee had to call him and reject him. And so rather than just rejecting him like really, politically correctly, he's made up a story because he got awkward and didn't know what to say.
Oh, no.
And he said to the candidate, oh, mate, yeah, look, got the feedback from the client and, unfortunately, we found out a couple of things and, it's just going to be a bit of a conflict because you're going to have to be going to schools to sell the security systems and, we don't want you to be around kids and all this shit. No. And this candidate was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, mate, it's just, we wouldn't want to put you in that situation where you're with like little kids and it's just a risk and all like fully just
spiraling. Oh
my God. It was the worst. Anyway, it turns out, so this guy blew up and he's like, this is so unfair, blah, blah, blah. This is career ending for me. Turns out a 17-year-old girl created a fake allegation against him because she didn't like him, and it ended his career in TV. And the mum actually overheard the daughter like 2 years after the allegation that she made it up, went to the cops, said, my daughter's made this up, it never happened, overheard her telling her friend. But all the news articles on the allegation are still up. And so he's never actually been charged or convicted. It never actually happened, but he's just got all these news articles about him assaulting a minor.
Yikes.
And so it's just like this shadow that's been following him for years that he can't overcome. And then he's got a recruiter telling him that we don't want to put you in a school near kids. And he's like triggered major. And then I had the Human Rights Association on the phone to me saying you've violated his human rights, and I had to have a mediation call. And
you would have been pretty young. You would have been 25.
I was 25.
That is not what you need.
Oh my God. It was like the first 6 months of starting the business. I was like, wow.
This is what it's about.
My business is about to go down in flames. I got the Human Rights Association calling me right now saying I violated someone's human rights, and I wigged out. I was talking to my mum. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? Talking to my old colleague. I'm like, mate, why did you even say that? Could you have just said someone else was a better fit and move on? Like, why did you say we don't want to put you in a... Like, the client didn't even say that. He goes, oh, mate, I just started saying things and I wasn't sure what to say. And I'm like, oh, shit.
I appreciate the honesty, but less is more in those situations.
Yeah. You just made up an even worse scenario for the candidate. And but the guy was actually really cool. He just said, oh, look, I just want an apology.
Yeah. And
so we apologized to him, and that was the end of it. But it was still like a moment of chaos at that point. That's my story.
Declan?
Mate, I don't have anything through the interview process. I did place a guy in a role, and he ended up he would call me back to back to back because something happened, and he was 6 weeks into the job, said a derogatory comment to a girl, and they had to get rid of him. And then he would just call me all the time. He's like, mate, they got rid of me. You've ruined my life. Like, what have you done? You headhunted me for this role. And it just went on like stalker vibes for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Surely you'd have like situations like that for you.
Oh, yeah, but we don't need to delve into those.
Oh, okay.
Let's bring the mood into
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you very much, Lexi, for joining us on Confessions of a Recruiter. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Love it.
Congratulations on your first podcast. This will be great for the Go1 brand.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of many.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got the Go1 green popping up, flashing in the background.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lexi.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.